Okay, video 2 here. We're going to do problems 7 through 11 on this. There are 12 problems on the quiz, and these do correspond to those 12 problems, but the last problem kind of applies to applies to the last 2 problems on the quiz. Okay, so remember that. I'll say something in class about this as well, but just so you are aware. Okay, let's do number 7. And I'm going to move this text box. I'm going to reduce that so you guys can see everything. Number 7, you have 5 plus 3x equals 47. This is a two-step equation. So we're going to set up our fence, and then we are going to remember the goal is to get the term with the variable by itself first. All right? And so the trick with this one is a lot of people see the 5 and they don't see a sign, and they say, oh, well, I'm just going to add 5 to both sides. But you have to ask yourself a question. Is this 5 positive or negative? Okay, and if it's the only reason you would add a 5 is if it were negative, but I don't know about you, but that looks positive to me, right? You always look to the left of a term to see what its sign is. So like 3x's sign is positive, 47's sign is positive because it doesn't have a sign, 5's sign is positive because it doesn't have a sign. So you want to make sure that you are always doing the opposite of it. So negative 5, because it will give you a very different answer. Okay, and then that cancels this out. 47 minus 5 is 42. Then you have 3x. Your next step is, well, 3 is multiplying by x. So I'm going to do the opposite to get x by itself. So I'm going to divide by 3. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side because it's a balanced equation. And then you would get x is equal to 14. X equals 14. And then just put it in real quick. 5 plus 3 times 14 equals 47. Well, I know 3 times 14 is 42 because I just redid it here. 42 plus 5 is 47. You're all good to go. Okay, let's do 8. All right, word problems. And this one, it really isn't much of a word problem. They're just pretty much asking you to solve that equation. So Tony's looking at a new printer for $249. Yes, there are printers that cost that much and a lot more. This is $43 more than half the cost of the touchscreen Chromebook he also wants. All right, so think about that. It's saying this is an amount of money more than half. So that means half the cost of the touchscreen notebook is not quite $249. It's $43 less. All right. So you're looking at a Chromebook that's, closer to $500 than not, right? It's not going to be quite that much, but it's kind of in that range. And yes, those exist as well. All right. So it says use this equation to find the cost C of the Chromebook. So all they're saying is solve this for C. All right. So I'm going to write this down. I'm going to set up my fence. I'm going to give myself a little room here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to understand that this is the term with the variable, so I got to get rid of anything else on that same side. So it's being added by 43. I'm going to subtract 43 on both sides. And a lot of you, if you had to figure this out in your head, you would naturally do this, but this forces you to see what you're doing. All right, so then you get 206, which is canceled here, and you get C over 2. So what this means, because, man, I get some crazy answers from people on problems like this. What this means is that half of the amount of C is equal to $206. So please don't say, oh, I'm going to divide them both by 2 then, and then give me 103, because that doesn't even make sense. All right? This says half of C. In other words, if you divide C by 2, you get 206. That means C has to be bigger than 206. In fact, it has to be twice as big as 206. All right, so you're going to actually take this and you are going to multiply both sides by 2 because C is being divided by 2. So you do the opposite of it. So even if you can't remember the process, at least use a little bit of common sense with this and let that try to prevail. All right, so 2, the 2's cancel, you're left with C. And then 206 times 2, sorry, that's a 2, not a question mark, gives you $412 is the cost of your Chromebook. And if you think about that, it says it's $43 more than half of it. All right, so half of 412 is 206. And then if you add 43 to that, because it's $43 more than that, then you'll get to your starting number at 249. All right, number 9. Write the following verbal statements as equations. So we're going to do 9 and 10 in the same box. 6 more than 9 times a number is 546. Let's do the is 546. Remember, is your equal sign. Or sorry, not 546, 456. Saying that like I'm dyslexic. Sometimes I do that. So you get 456. And now let's write this left side. 6 more than is going to be 6 plus. Because more than means plus. And then 9 times a number means 9 times n. And remember, when we write those, we just put them together. So here you go. 6 plus 9n equals 456. And that's all you got to do for that one. Okay, next, let's look at 10. The sum of 9 and a number divided by 7. So we're having a sum, and the whole sum is going to equal 18. So you're adding 9 and a number divided by 7. So that's one term right there. So a number could be x, and if you're dividing it by 7, you're going to write it like a fraction. Please do not write this as x divided by 7. That is not what we want to see in an algebraic equation. You want to see it as a fraction, because guess what? Fractions are division problems. Okay? So that would be the finished answer for this. Your keywords are divided by, sum, right? And tells you that it's an addition problem. Is always tells you where your equal sign goes, all right? And then you just kind of use the numbers they give you. All right, last question. Trey goes to the batting cages to practice hitting. He rents a helmet for $4 and pays 75 cents for each group of pitches, 20 pitches per group, okay? And ends up spending a total of $7 while he is there. To find a variable, then write and solve an equation to find how many groups of pitches Trey paid for. Now, what they're doing is they're asking you, you have to be careful with this one, because they're asking you for how many groups of pitches. They're not saying how many pitches. They're saying how many groups. And we know that each group is 75 cents because that's what's written down right here. So this information they give you, this 20 pitches per group right here, really isn't important. It doesn't matter how many pitches are there. That's not what we're worried about. We're worried about the number of groups of pitches. So for all we care, it could be 4. All right, or it could be 3,000,008, but it doesn't matter how many it is. So this is information that sometimes they will give you that you really don't need. Okay, you might want to know it if you were there doing it. You'd want to know, well, how many pitches do I get? But for our purposes, we don't need to know it. So everything else, though, we need to know. All right, so we've got a helmet for $4, right? Oops, that I did that with the wrong thing. I want the highlighter. All right, helmet for $4. So we've got all this information. So what I would ask yourself is, what's your total? How much money did you spend altogether? Well, and that's our last bit of information, okay? So it looks like he spent $7. All right, so we've got quite a bit here to work with. So it means our total is 7. That's what he spent. And that $7 is made up of, and I'm going to write this. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. No, you're not. So I'm not going to use it. I'm just going to use black. So that $7 is made up of $4 that was for the helmet. All right. And then however many groups of pitches he bought. And so you don't know how many groups of pitches he bought. And that's where the define a variable comes in. So let's just say P is number of groups of pitches. And even though most of you won't do this because you're just not used to doing it, it's great if you can actually physically write that down in your problem. Tell me what your variable means, what it means, okay? So I know that you're gonna get a certain number of groups of pitches and that each set of group of pitches costs this much. So if you got one group of pitches, you would figure out your total cost by saying, well, I spent 75 cents on the pitches and then $4 on the helmet. So I add those two together and I get my cost. If I get two groups of pitches, that would be 75 times 2, which is $1.50, and I would add that to 4 and get $5.50. So what you're doing is you're multiplying the number of groups of pitches by 75 cents each time. So that's why I do a different case so that you can kind of think it through and see what you're doing. And so at this point, two-step equation, all right? We want to get this 0.75p by itself first. This 4 is positive, and you should know that from looking at it. It's not negative $4, it's positive. So we want to do the opposite to get rid of it. So we're going to subtract 4 from both sides. 7 minus 4 is $3. And then you have 0.75p written out a little less squashed now. And then to get p by itself, you just divide by what its coefficient is. And its coefficient is 0.75 or 75 hundredths. And divide that. And then you will get that he got 4 groups of pitches. And so you would write down 4 groups of pitches. And at that point, you are completely finished with everything on here. Okay, so make sure you're, checking your answers as you're doing these and asking yourself while you're going through this, does this make sense? Because that's a huge component of being good at problem solving, is checking yourself as you're going. Because if you just ram through something and it doesn't make any sense and you get an answer, then why would you do that? That's completely weird. You wouldn't do that if you were trying to fix something on a car or in your house or figure out a problem you were having with something. You wouldn't just blindly go forward with something unless you knew that you were checking it as you were going along, right? So you want to make sure you're doing the same thing with math problems. All right, thank you for your help. I hope you guys liked it and it helps you out. So have a fabulous day.